Good morning.
Morning, Bob.
Good morning. A wonderful day.
Yep, looks like it's really nice out.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been for 6 o'clock tea time. I had about 23 degrees here.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a little chilly. Little chilly.
My
Are you
grandson.
playing today?
No, I have this, and then I have a haircut appointment. I think I need one.
Oh, that makes two of us. Jeez, I need to do it. Hold on, I gotta shut my door. Yeah, I could use a haircut as well this weekend.
Yeah.
See. Hopefully this works. Let's see.
Yeah, that's better.
Thank you. Just visit me if you need help.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Good morning, Norma Jean.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes.
It's a new setup, so I was just making sure it was working.
That's mine too. I'm using this new setup and I really quite like it.
Yay. With your pivoting?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
Morning, guys. Hello.
Kathy looks very fashionable today. Curly, I love it.
It's all a facade. My hair wants to be curly, wants to be straight, so you just gotta go with it. This is my weekend look.
I have the same problem. I'm getting close to having to pull a Marco and Ben. Like it's getting really close.
Nah. What are you
Not
talking about?
close.
You got plenty of freaking hair. What are you talking about, bud?
But all you have left is
On
an
the
island.
block.
That's when it comes off. Right? When you have a reverse mohawk, that's when it comes off.
Yeah, that's right.
My brother calls it the palm tree, and it's just like a little island with a little, and it always goes
I call that the 20s.
I have
The
not.
last 8 months that I was working, I got a bald spot here and one in the back. Since I quit working, it started to grow back in,
Oh, that's a win.
you know?
But,
I think it was
Bob,
stress related.
golf season starting.
Yeah, but
what's
I won't
golf
let it
season gonna
stress
do?
me.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a subtle hint that he wants us to quit.
I was going to type in the chat, but Andy still has us blocked from that 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 you two
Oh,
are
do I really?
resignations next week.
But say that again, Jamie.
I was going to type in the chat, we should expect Marco and Ben's resignations next
Yeah,
week.
right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Is that all it
that's
takes?
good to go now.
It is Secretary's Day next Wednesday, by the way.
It's next week, right? Don't tell me
Next
that's
Wednesday.
today.
I always usually remind you all, so consider this your reminder.
We appreciate it because I
Thanks.
don't remember.
Should not be during vacation. That's not fair.
Oh, it's fair.
Then
Okay.
do it on Monday.
We'll have to.
Oh,
Jeremy should be
Jody,
joining.
I have
us
you
shortly.
logged in twice.
Oh, Jody's. Oh yeah, look at that. She got like a sweet Patriots logo. Oh, it's
She's
gone.
gone now.
I couldn't get my video to work, so now it's working.
Jeremy should be right with us. Andy, he's just leaving class. He's got
Okay, and I'm
class is just
assuming
ended.
Heather's joining us. Let me just text her. I'm just gonna mute myself for a sec. Just give it a couple more minutes. Yeah, Norma Jean, this is much better, this setup. Oh, hi, Heather.
Hi.
We'll give Jeremy another minute because he was teaching.
Yeah, he's just getting settled in the conference room. I can hear him.
Awesome. I don't know about anybody else, but this has been a long week.
And it's only Thursday.
Thanks for that. I get my second shot tomorrow, so that should be interesting. Oh, there's Jeremy.
Bob's trying to share with us, but he's on mute.
Oh, he needs coffee. Sure, it's only coffee that I need this morning. It's funny. I go to the gym at like 3:30 in the morning, and for years there's been nobody there. And then all of a sudden, over the last couple of months, it's packed at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I was used to being, there were 3 of us that went that early.
I think I
I'm
heard
so
a
excited.
rumor. The average weight
What's that?
gain from COVID is 17 pounds.
Yes, that's about right. I actually
Okay,
think
well,
it's
there.
like 22.
Hard to put on a speedo without going to the gym.
Good point.
No, it's not. Have you gone to OB in a while?
I mean, but I was going to say, you actually are right at that portion of the beach where it's real interesting sometimes.
And that was pre-COVID stuff, not even.
Yeah.
Question is, are they Canadian or American?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah.
Rolls are rolls.
Oh,
Sketchy
Yep.
is sketchy. Yep.
Yeah.
You gotta remember
Oh,
at this point.
all right. Wait for Bob. Bob needed coffee. I don't blame him. Oh.
I finished the letter, Andy.
What's that?
I finished your letter.
What was wrong with it?
Can you
Of
see?
course. No, I can't.
It's too blurry.
I'm sure.
Hold on. Do you see? I just have a few edits.
A few. It's the way it usually goes. Just so we're clear, that's the way that usually goes. The fact that there were only like 4 pen marks on that paper, I feel really good. Like, all right. Good morning, everybody. We'll get started. So we've got a few things we have to talk about this morning. I'd like to be as judicious as possible with everybody's time because I know everybody has a ton to do. So I sent out an agenda. Where Kathy and I had a meeting yesterday with Western Maine superintendents, but we'll put that under number 4. So I'd like to start with number 1, which is contact tracing SOP. Kathy.
Yeah, so on 3:30, NJ, can you just mute? I'm getting feedback.
Me?
Yeah, thank you. So on 3:31, we got an updated SOP. And after Jody and I kind of were scratching our heads on some of the language because on page 4 and 7, it contradicts itself. I did highlight some of the pieces and contact the DOE and got kind of like, it's self-explanatory. I don't know why it's so confusing. So I did contact some of the other districts and checked in on how they were interpreting it. And ultimately it's coming down to, they're trying to do close contact tracing similar to the definition. So in the schools, we have been, it's in the classroom, everyone in the classroom becomes a close contact has been what our SOP is. And now it's really kind of looking at the 6-foot rule. So ironically, our first case after this SOP was a kindergarten classroom with 7 students in it. And so we had to make the decision to either think about that child's day and everything, because we know in kindergarten, they're not necessarily in the entire day sitting in a seat like a high schooler might be. So thinking about all of their play and movement. And so where would their 6-foot bubble and who would be in their 6-foot bubble? It just seemed a lot more time consuming and really more challenging than just putting the 7 kids into quarantine. So we have decided just to continue the practice of all the students in the classroom being a close contact as well as the adults. And we said that we would come back to CPT and say, if you guys really want us to do that or feel, but I will say it is a lot more work on administration and nurses. It's enough to contact trace a child's day, but now we're adding the small bubble. We have not had, compared to other schools, our quarantine practices has not really warranted that many closures. And I say that with 8th grade only because of it ended up being all our teachers, but they only missed 1 in-person day instruction. But I just want you to be mindful that we are recommending that we continue our practice. We've had great results with that. We have not put as many kids in quarantine. I am concerned about the time intensive pieces because like today we had 2 more positive cases, but there's no close contacts. But on Monday, the last 3 Mondays, it always seems to be on the same day.
3 Mondays.
The last 3 Mondays have been quite busy, and it would have taken us probably twice as long to track all of that. So I do want you to know that there has been a change. We have not made that change. I will say it is mixed reviews in our area about if they're moving to that change or not. I think some are going to use it case by case, and I would rather not. I would rather just it be consistent on how we do things. So that's what the change was, and that's our recommendation. And I just wanted to throw that out there to the team and see what y'all think.
Thoughts by anyone?
Yeah, so I can understand especially in kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, they are all around going, sitting around and doing different things. So I wonder at the high school, so if we have a student in high school that is positive, they float from classroom to classroom. So with this policy, we would take every student in every one of their classes and consider them a close contact.
We have
So-
been, and we have been, so like, let's say the case on that Monday, we ended up putting about 20 kids in, from following that one child, it was about 20 students. I just think we're going to get some questions, and I think like asking Jeremy would be a great thing, that if we say that there's a a positive case in your classroom and we don't put you as a close contact, I think we should, I think our teachers would be concerned at this point or questioning. Because our practice so far has been everyone in the room is out of abundance of caution to consider a close contact. But if the board, or I mean, if the CPT is recommending that we change, we do have guidance from the CDC to do that.
Well, the question I have, and what happened with the 8th grade team was, asking the teachers if they were 6 feet away from the kids, right? So we had 1 kid in 8th grade that saw all teachers. Some teachers do hover around their kids, and they were within that 6-foot radius for more than 15 minutes. But, it just became hard to really know how close the teachers got to the students, which is what caused us to send everyone home, because we can't sub for 7 teachers. Marco, I asked Kathy about the high school, and that's been a practice at the high school as well, has it not?
That's correct. Well, I mean, do you mean in which way, Ben?
Well, as far as doing the 6-foot rule with staff, like it's really
No.
complicated to decipher that.
Yeah, no, we have not been doing that, Ben. I mean, essentially, if we have a student who has tested positive, we've essentially had all students and staff members associated with that close contact go out on quarantine.
Yeah, and we racked our brains over this for hours. I just don't know a different way of doing it. I don't
Yeah.
think it could be equitable otherwise. So,
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. And, you know, I don't want to say just for simplicity, but I think for consistency's sake, it makes sense to continue the practice that we have in place.
Me
You know,
too.
we're doing that in all aspects of, you know, school life, you know, so if we think about it in the sense of, you know, sports or co-curricular activities, we would do the same. You know, we have lists of kids, and they would be all considered close contact if somebody did turn up as a positive case. So my recommendation too would be to, you know, continue with the practice that we have at hand.
Agreed.
Oh, I did miss an important, Jody, you should have yelled at me. There was your opportunity. I did miss one piece and change that we have not been following. They have finally defined the cafeteria. So the cafeteria is supposed to be 14 feet. So unmasked, we're supposed to do close contact. So having assigned seats in the cafeteria. We have not from the very beginning made anyone in the cafeteria a close contact. And that's because we have not proven at this point that there's been any transmission within our schools. So we've been really just sticking with the class time because the kids are there the longest. So we are recommending that we're not doing the cafeteria as an additional contact tracing, but that is defined now.
Did you say assigned seating?
You would have to have assigned seating because we would then have to do the 14 feet around. And I know in some places it is assigned seats and sometimes it's not. So that would be an added area for you guys to be tracking every day, making sure everyone's in their assigned seats.
So, you know, I'm speaking just for myself. Reality is, since we have had no documented case where a student or staff member who is diagnosed with COVID has, under our current procedures, transmitted it to someone else in the school system, then to me it appears that the keeping the social distancing and wearing the mask and the sanitation and everything that we're doing, that while we like to use a term because I see it everywhere, over a abundance of caution, you know,
I hear it in my sleep, Bob.
yeah, I don't quite understand, I guess, the necessity, since we've, as far as I know, we send out 95 students, we send out 20 some students. None of those students test positive in that 10 days. So they didn't get it. So we haven't done anything except take them out of the classroom for 10 days. We haven't stopped the spread. We haven't done any of that, because if they would have, one of them would have to come down with it from the school contact for the spread to go. So I think the overabundance of caution that we're using is an overabundance. And I'm not sure that, you know, I think maybe there's a need to, I don't know how we can go and look at a high school or a middle school classroom and find some way to either segment it into segments of the classroom so that not everybody is taken out. It just seems to me that without any evidence that our school environment is allowing for the spread, that we are just denying education opportunities, maybe excessively, in order to provide the safety that we want. So that's kind of my thoughts, is that, I mean, if we ever saw that we didn't send all 22 kids out, we just sent out the one, and maybe someone that they are real close with. And then all of a sudden one of those other students get it, and it kind of traces back to that student and not the same social event that they had gone to before. And then that would be a different thought. But those are my thoughts. just one voice amongst many.
Well, Jody,
You know-
from a medical perspective,
Well, from my most recent experience at the middle school, I can't confidently say that I would be able to accurately contact trace 6 feet around a student to be able to limit that at the middle school. And I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I know we're not talking primary level, but it can't happen. I mean, I just can't see how we could do it there either based on the movement in the classrooms for the primary kiddos.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about the 6 feet. I'm just talking about that one student goes out. We're ignoring some of the other guidelines for the 14 feet in the cafeteria. This is just another guideline, right? So do we need to worry about the 6 feet, or does that one student go out in quarantine and the rest of the students continue to go to class? That's
problem from my perspective. Oh, go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
No, that was my idea. So I wasn't trying to get us to try and deal with 6 foot or an 8 foot or a 12 foot close contact bubble. It was just remove the threat, so to speak, and then monitor and see. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, the problem that we run into, just from my perspective, I mean, when we come down to the case we had here at the office, right, is trying to figure out who is within who, because we have to put in quarantine. We don't have a choice. Kids that are within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes throughout the day. Am I correct in that statement? We don't have a choice in that, right, Jody? That
And
is
ultimately, Andy, you accepted federal funds saying
right.
that you will follow that rule with
Right.
the CARES
That
and the
was one of
ESSER. One of the boxes
Yeah.
you're clicking is saying, yes, we're going to
We
follow
will
that.
follow the 6 foot rule, right?
And so SPS was technically by definition at outbreak status, right? 4 cases
Right.
within 3 households within 2 weeks, 5 now because of this morning. However, if they can deem us as an outbreak, but if they're going to call us and say, they're not going to force us to shut down, but they're going to call and say, what are you doing to mitigate those things? And if we can't say we have had close contacts or we're putting people in quarantine, they will shut us down and they will take our funding away.
Yeah. And
the same check box that says you're going to have to do the 14 feet in the cafeteria.
No,
that was not one of them.
It's not.
No.
So maintaining social distancing requirements, it was a pure blanket 6 foot, and we're at 3 foot
6
anyway.
foot.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We're
The state of
already
Maine.
not in compliance with the 6 foot rule. We're at 3 foot, which is the state. So that's the state money,
Right.
not the federal money. All right.
Right.
So I'm just, I want to be safe. I don't want to put anybody in harm. But so far, the statistics show that we haven't put anybody in harm with the way that we're operating the schools.
There's an argument to be made that because of the way we've done this, that's the reason we haven't had spread within our buildings too.
No, not in this particular case. It is, we haven't had the spread, which means that once that threat is removed, the spread can't happen. We've mitigated it, right? Because of the procedures we had is preventing it from spreading. So once the threat's gone, then it can't spread because it's not there anymore. So, I think, I just think that we are, not only us probably, but other school systems as well, are denying too much opportunity based upon the evidence of transmissions or lack of transmissions within the school setting. So, but again, so I'm one, I hear everybody else is kind of, let's just take the classroom and put it out. At some point, we're going to be shut down because it's going to hit a few more people and a few more teachers, and we're going to be, or bus drivers. A kid rides a bus and has a bus driver. Do we put the bus driver out?
Nope. As long as a front window and a back window are open, we're good.
And they did define ventilation on a bus a lot better than it was, but they're different rules. So we're following all of those rules. The only one that was not defined originally was the cafeteria. It is defined now. And I guess my recommendation is we got 5 weeks left of school. Can we just stick with the same SOPs and then have the CPT look at our data and then make recommendations for changes for SOPs for the fall?
Yeah, I can go along with that because I fear that there's enough non-vaxxers out there that we're not gonna have this thing beat by come September.
And I
Yeah,
think that is why the
don't disagree with
DOE,
you.
yeah, and I think that's why the DOE was saying that yesterday, was that we will not be at herd mentality. The students will not be vaccinated at that point to then loosen up those requirements.
All right, yay or nay, stay where we are or change the protocol? Thumbs up for yay, thumbs down for nay. Okay, all right, we're gonna stick where we are for the moment. And then I think Kathy makes a good point. We need to relook at this for the fall. I mean, obviously, this is not our last meeting, as you guys know. We're going to be continuing to do this for a while. So we've got 5 weeks left of school. We'll continue doing our processes now, and then we'll relook at it for the fall. All right, number 2, end of year events. How do we, Kathy?
So
Take
there was
away on this.
questions about, so I know that there was a lot of questions about some transitional events, and obviously guidelines for outdoor events were happening. And there was, I know people were asking, you know, can I have a barbecue? Can I have people coming up? Can we do those things? So we just want to make sure that we're being clear. We're talking about those kind of things, about what you're planning on doing to see if it follows and what we could do to mitigate some things. And then also just think things through in terms of tracking. So it would be really nice if each of the principals could talk about what any of their end of the year transitional things are, so that we're all aware, and then just talk about anything that CPT needs to know. So I don't know,
Jamie?
Jamie?
Sure. Some of the things that we've talked about now, these are not necessarily all transitional. So do you just want to make it more broad with end of year events?
Yeah, I was just trying to give it transitional as an example of how this conversation came on the agenda.
So some of the things we've spoken about, you know, last year we missed out on a lot of events because we were remote, and we were hoping to have some of those things that kids really look forward to for the end of this year. We've discussed with team leaders at Carrie Ricker doing a field day. Now, a regular field day wouldn't fly at all, but we got a little bit creative. All of our students in each grade level are outside together now for recess. They wear their masks. Of course, we try to keep them far enough apart, but when they're running around playing tag and whatnot, I can't promise they're always 3 feet apart. We shoot for that. So our thinking was to have a day that was a field day, but to do it by grade level. So a couple of hours for each grade. They would still wear their masks. Jason has been great with phys ed stuff, with sanitizing equipment in between different groups using it. We would have staff able to help with that. They'd be outside, which I know is more safe, I guess, safer for in CDC's perspective with COVID. I think that's kind of the details on that one. So it kind of meets an extended recess. It's the same exact plan that we would follow at recess time, and we've been doing that all year safely enough. Another thing that we had, we're trying to get the evening events planned. Our teachers are supposed to do 2 evening events, and that's been really challenging. We did a pre-KK Zoom. We had very few parents there. It was for both schools, Sabattis and Libby Tozier. It was okay. We recorded it. I'm not sure how many people watched it after, but it's not great. You can't do the same, you know, you can't do the same kind of things. It's not the excitement of like having parents come to the building. So again, we know parents can't come into the building. We're not planning any in-person events or anything like that. However, last year we did a drive-through parade the last day of school. We're hoping to do something very similar to that at Libby Tozier. It would be kind of a, I don't know what to call it, a make and take like project idea. So each grade level would have a booth set up. We would use behind Libby Tozier, and then they could go all the way up. So it would hopefully not impact traffic at all. It would be early in the evening. outside of school hours, and they could leave the furthest parking lot, the furthest entrance to Carrie Ricker. So they would stop at each booth and they would be handed something. And as they went through each grade level, each teacher would have a setup there. It would be a theme for camping, and they would go home and have like a family activity to do together. So it does a couple different things. It brings them to the school in the only way that we can right now, because they're itching to get inside, our parents are, and they can't. So it brings them there. It gets them to be able to see for 2 seconds in person the staff. It's kind of a goodbye. It would be a couple weeks before, I think the week before school is out was our plan. And it gives them a family activity to do when they get home. So that's one of the ideas that we had as well. It would be very minimal in person. They'd be handed something from a staff member and then move along through and leave. It would be just a couple of minutes actually there. I think that's kind of what we have as far as like step up days go and all of that. We're just planning on Zooms because that's all I think we can do safely. And parent nights and whatnot would be done that way, just like we did last year. That's all I've got.
Okay. Ben?
So at the middle school, we're talking about having a evening activity for parents, like a barbecue. We're still going to have our award ceremony happen through Zoom for 8th grade, but we're just trying to find a different way of getting kids and parents to school to kind of wrap up the year. Last year we did the parking lot parade, but this year we're actually seeing kids in schools, so we don't really find a use for that. So we're thinking about 3 different nights, having a barbecue each night for kids and parents to come to the school to do a, kind of a meet and greet, kind of a community event. And at the primary school, we were talking about doing a sort of like a field day with 6-foot events. So, we bought a lot of cornhole. We have a lot of 6-foot games that Kyle has been collecting. So we thought that would be fun for kids and parents to participate in. And that is all we have so far.
I would just be cautious of the eating. In some ways it does, I think is already bringing people together and conjugating that have not, and you're adding another piece. I would just challenge you to reduce the food, because then that's the unmasking, and then that's even more contact tracing. So just think about how you're going to be tracking a sign in of everyone that's there with phone numbers and such. But I guess if let's like not push our limits, like we'll get kind of like everyone together, but do we have to add the food piece? I guess I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I just don't want to like.
Well, the other version of that would be just doing the 6-foot games. We have the golf version of cornhole. We have cornhole. We have a bunch of variety of things we can do in a light competition, just for fun kind of way. It may limit the people that come, but it'd be something, not nothing. And these kids have lost so much these last 2 years. It's just kind of hard to fathom not doing something for them this year that's different and special. And the parade gets bantered about again, but again, we're seeing the kids already every day, so we're not sure if the parade is as meaningful as it was in the past. So, maybe it goes from having a barbecue to just having a, family competition day or a family fun day.
Thoughts on food, everybody?
Can I ask a clarifying question? I know I could Google this, but Kathy, it's ingrained in your brain, I'm sure. What is our number that's allowed outside? Is it still only 100, or is that much larger now?
So it's all about capacity. So after May 24th, right, you're at, so right now we're at 75% capacity. After May 24th, you're at 100% capacity outside. But that it's about social distancing and all of that. It does not really talk about the food piece. And then once you add the food piece, now you're talking about, we're actually treating it as if it's a cafeteria. So, I would stick with outside. You can do 100% capacity. I would say my guidance to you is look at the prom and the graduation guidance of what it does to conjugate a big crowd outside that has just been given. And that will help you kind of define like what activities you can and can't do and what are the rules that are there is the best, I guess the best way to kind of give you like some specific guidance of large crowd outside.
think from my
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, Bob.
No, it's Jim.
Oh, it's Jim. Okay, I thought it was Bob. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna add that for athletic, what we've been told is the 75% capacity. That's very difficult to figure out, right? So the MPA said just make sure everybody's feet apart and masked, and except for families that come together. So that's how they've approached the large gatherings.
And it's easier if instead of having like people just conjugate, that you actually already have set seats or set tables that define what that 6 feet, 8 feet, because let's face it, some of our families are not been used to having to like understand what that social distancing is. And it's, you don't want to have to be the COVID police the whole night going up 6 feet, kind of like at a high school dance, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, kind of thing. So I would just make sure you have your spaces set out so that it's just a visual reminder of what spread out looks like.
Right. We have signs, and we've marked areas where spectators can be and where they can't be, because we actually have to extend the dugout for player personnel down the foul lines because we can't fit everybody in the dugout and social distance. So yeah, we've got areas marked and roped off where they can be and where they can't be, and unfortunately, it will be the police. I'll be out there making sure, but I think people are used to it. So I'm hoping that we get a little help on that end.
I think from my perspective, and again, one voice here, but I'd love to do things like barbecues and things like that because kids need it, families need it. My worry is the minute we start serving food, we know how that goes, right? If you feed them, they will come, which is a good thing. But also it breeds the hanging out. The minute you serve food, people are unmasked. They tend to congregate in groups. And I do worry about that. I'd like to hear from others about that as well.
I have some clarifying questions, Andy. I know Marco hasn't gotten to talk yet. Like, then if we're having a food, so I wasn't thinking that big because I didn't think we'd be able to go there. So if we did do a barbecue or something of that sort, or even something with parents getting out of their vehicle, do we have to then allow them to come in and use the bathroom? Do we get porta potties? Like what? I mean, I have a million questions.
Yeah, the board's been really clear, and I don't want to speak for you, Bob, but the board's been really clear about use of facilities, the internal facilities, the buildings. And I think if we do that kind of stuff, we do have to offer some sort of bathroom situation, things like that. But that if we don't get porta potties, then people are going to need to use the building. But the board has said we're not using buildings. Outside groups are not using buildings. I worry that we open that up and start bringing people inside that I don't want to negate the board's direction, and B, that could open the door for rec groups to say, well, we want to use the gym, we want to use the cafeteria, that kind of stuff. So I don't know, your thoughts on that, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of waiting until people are done, but a couple issues already. If we're going to do outside games and people congregate, during gym, all of those things are sanitized between classes, right? You're going to be out there with all these families using the same equipment to play the golf cornhole or the cornhole, whatever. I don't know what the risk is of passing this particular virus through shared use of the things. And I'm concerned that we don't do anything that opens us up to go and say, well, if it was good enough for this, why couldn't we do it for the students to keep them in class more? If we can let everybody from all the cohorts get together, for something with the staff and the parents and the whole families, why couldn't we have had the kids in classes for 5 days a week? So, there has to be a consistency to the message that is sent. And whether it is, I guess it's been a long time since I had, I was in school, elementary or even high school, But I'm not sure. I guess we've ingrained in this population here. I grew up in Milwaukee, big city. We didn't do those types of things, right? I mean, I had over almost 1,000 kids in my graduating class, right? So we didn't do these types of things. We might have had a field trip where we go to Chicago to the museum or something like that for a class trip. But we didn't have the end of year two thing except proms and that jazz and graduation. So, but here we are used to having a bunch of different ceremonies and things like that. 8th grade used to be graduation instead of just a promotion. When they're kind of big activities in our communities and people look forward to them. But, I'm not sure that even again this year that these types of activities are available. I mean, I'm more concerned about what are the plans to go and control the graduation ceremonies, and what are we going to let the seniors do as far as events leading up to graduation. I mean, once they're graduated, we've given them a sheepskin and walk out the door, and it's not a school sponsored function like the night of graduation. Now they're kind of on their own. If the next day they want to all get together down at the beach, there's nothing we can do about it. It's not school sponsored. But up until that time, we have some liability, and we're sending a message. So, my concern is that we stay consistent with the message. We stay within the guidelines that we've been using, and we can't be opening up the buildings for people to go in and use the facilities. That's we're going to have somebody there and make sure that they can only sneak into the corner to where the closest restroom is. But then that kind of violates our use of the spaces. So, when you have a bunch of people get together for a couple hours, no matter what they're doing, you're going to have some people that are going to need to use a facility. And if you add food, you're going to have people that want to wash their hands and before and after, and you've got everything else that goes along. And I agree that once you start having food, people have masks, they get around and talk. They're going to come together as family groups and talk anyway. But if they can keep their mask on, at least they got their mask on. There will not be 6 feet of separation between both family groups. I just can't see that that's going to happen. Everybody come together and stay 6 feet apart. So it's concerning. It would be nice if they could do it. And I don't, I have no ideas. I mean, I really don't have any ideas of what would be as safe things to go and do within our guidelines that we've applied, but we just got to be consistent with the message.
Heather, were you going to say something? Okay. I thought it looked like you were. All right, let's hear from Marco.
Sure. So, taking into consideration the constraints that we have for large gatherings, we essentially have 3 events that we're looking to do for seniors, and those are by cohort. So what we're looking to do is we would do 75% capacity because these would be prior to May 24th. And essentially what it would be class night for cohorts A and C out on the Stacen Doucette Memorial Field. We would use bleachers and then bring in a couple of additional bleachers that Jim has for, I believe it's a soccer field, and we bring those around for additional capacity. We'd limit obviously the number of guests that could come with the graduate to see class night, but everybody would be socially distanced, wearing a mask, and they would be outdoors. As Jim put in the chat, we do have porta potties at the high school already. We just have them brought over closer to the football field for ease of access. And the ceremony itself would be quite short. We would have graduates most likely sitting in chairs away from the bleachers itself, like kind of in front of a makeshift stage that we have. So just when we do awards, so we would call kids up one at a time and have them receive their award. So we would do that for cohort A and C, and then we would also do one for cohort B and D, just to keep those numbers where they should be. And then really the last activity that we do have for seniors would be graduation. And we are doing a drive-in graduation like we did for graduation last year. That's going to be again at the Auburn Lewiston Airport. For those of you guys that are in the know, we are, you've already heard this, but those of you guys that are not necessarily, this is the first time you'll hear it. We are partnering with EL Lewiston, Levitt, and Poland. All of us will be at the Auburn Lewiston Airport to do graduation. We're using the same vendors. We're renting porta potties. We're helping out with putting down lines for parking. We're essentially ensuring that, the success that we had last year with graduation continues for this year. So that's what we're doing, just those 3 events.
And I think that's pretty standard across the state. That's what we heard yesterday. Ben?
What I'm hearing is we probably should not plan events for the end of the year.
Well, I think what. No, go ahead.
Other than the usual like Zoom Awards night or something like that.
Well, and I think the sentiment I'm hearing is we've got to make sure we follow and I agree with Bob. The messaging has to be consistent, right? It just does. We have to be consistent on things. And the sentiment I'm hearing is we got to be really careful about how we invite the general public to our buildings, right? They've got to be socially distanced. Got to be less than 75% capacity. We just have to be consistent in our messaging, and we're not letting outside groups into our buildings. So I think as long as we're following those guidelines, that at least that's what I'm hearing. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but that's kind of what I've heard. Kathy?
And I appreciate everyone's, thoughtfulness on this. Our goal is to continue in-person instruction. Our goal for our seniors is to make sure that they are able to walk across that stage. So we want to make sure that if they were put into obviously being in a different risk, being at a different, like a class night event, that the 10 days, I don't know what the dates are, but if they were, Marco, I would make sure that they are at least 10 days ahead of graduation so that they could, if they were in quarantine, to come out and actually, because it would be awful to have a class night, have an exposure, and then they couldn't do graduation. So I would just be mindful of just the times. And I've already kind of reached out to Marco and saying, hey, what's the date of this? Because I am neurotic about dates and making sure. And our goal is to get kids for in-person instruction and for our seniors to enjoy their graduation. So
Let me double check those dates for you now.
Yeah. Jeremy? Oh, I wasn't sure if that was like a hand or a.
I thought you were raising your hand too. Listen, the things we learn about Zoom etiquette, right? It's always interesting. All right, more on that. Anything?
I guess
I do worry. Well, go ahead, Ben.
Well, I guess having any activity though, having a game night even if you broke it, but even if you did it by cohorts, it's still added risk. It still adds a different piece to that. So it'd be hard to, look at what we've done this year and then allow that to happen.
Yeah, and
that's
where I think the message.
Yeah, I think that it's quite appropriate and more than feasible to do end of year activities with the students inside the school during the regular course day. Special treats at the cafeteria, special, activities or something just to go and wish them well at the end of the school year for a job well done. So I think it just have to limit it to students and staff inside the facility or outside for student staff, and because we have them outside now. So I think we need to recognize and let the students recognize it's the end of the year and things, some of them are going to go to different buildings next year, are going to have different teachers. And I think the students will get some enjoyment out of that, and we can do that safely, and that continues with our communications and what we're doing.
Jamie? You're on mute.
I was doing so well. We have 3 staff members, so this is related, but a little bit different. 3 staff members retiring, and there's a lot of years of RSU 4 service between the 3 of them. Just on my end, I don't know who else has anybody retiring, but what are the rules with that? I'm being grilled about what can we do? We can't just let them leave after so many years, just off campus, and I don't plan it. Let them plan what they want, or I don't know.
That's the past. Actually, most of the parties and stuff
Yeah.
were out of school, non-school sanctioned parties anyway. So that's been past practice. I know Carrie Ricker has always done like a big barbecue at Beth's house and that kind of stuff. And that's been long-term. Libby Tozier used to go to Da Vinci's or Marco's or like one of those. And that's always been past practice, is for those teachers to have a party outside of school. So I would just encourage that to continue.
So as long as I'm not running it, if they're eating and not more than 6 feet away, it's off-site, we'll deal with it if something comes from it. No different than if they go out on a Friday afternoon.
Right.
Go out on a Friday night. Yep,
Correct.
as long as it's not ours.
Okay.
It would
I
be
mean,
nice to- don't you think it would be interesting? Don't you think it would be good if they did that like at the end of school? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when school concludes.
Yeah, yeah, after school is out, that'd be really nice.
June 8th. June 8th
I mean, I
would be a
think-
great day.
They have a comp day on
Jeremy, I
Wednesday.
think about some of the things that we did at the high school, years ago with retirements. Those weren't planned by, like, I never planned them as the assistant principal or anything like that. Those were all done on the outside, correct?
Yeah, I don't know that anything was ever, school sanctioned in any way that way. I mean, certainly, obviously, because it's a school, people involved at the school figured it out. But
Yeah.
I don't know that any monies were ever gone through a school account, that kind of stuff. I think it was all entirely outside. The only thing we ever did that was in a school building was the year that Jim had us all in our gym together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did
and
those a couple of times.
I believe someone gave someone a bottle of booze, which seemed a little weird. But other than that,
Yeah,
that
Jim
was,
used to give flowers because we'd run around and get
Yeah.
all these flowers from Longfellows.
flowers. Yeah. And obviously that's not happening this year. This is not the year to do that. The whole district powwow kind of deal is not on the table at this point. So, but yeah, I think historically those have all been done outside. It's no different than we're not going to tell people what they can and cannot do when they're not on our time. Right. I mean, I think ultimately we just stay out of that. And ideally, hopefully they hold those things. But I got to tell you, we got groups of staff that go to Doolin's on Friday night. We've got, it's what we got. It's a natural thing. So we don't step into it. We're good.
Okay, I think you were
So-
just worried about getting in trouble for even doing something off-site, so as long as
I don't-
I can sort of give that blessing, and I will suggest doing it after the last day of school.
June 7th on,
And-
baby.
Yeah. So, okay. And I credit everybody. I mean, it's you guys, it's the staff. I mean, trying to be creative for things for kids. Ultimately that is what we need to do. And the stuff that I'm hearing about is real good. I know Marco has done a ton of work on graduation, and the fact that we've been able to come together as a region, those school districts to work together on that is big. I think and that's a credit to those principals that have been, and you guys have been meeting all year. So I think that's a good thing. We can do it safely. We can have seniors get honored, which is, it's the culmination of 13 years of education. We've got to do something for them. So I think that's awesome. All right, playgrounds. I don't remember what this one was.
So there was a lot of conversation regarding, so there's two things with the playgrounds. So one was having extra recess in the cleaning and just, it's now getting warmer, people are going out. So that was that kind of just want continuity and consistency, and then we're all on the same page between custodial to administration to teachers, make sure we're all on the same page. Second is, I guess, just wanted to mention, I was at one of the schools on Friday, and I know like during our regular recess time, it's like set times, but then the extra one, is there like so I guess a couple of things come to mind. We have very, in-person instruction time, and it's limited on that. And I know on a Friday for a teacher, it's a Friday, but for that kid, it's really a Tuesday. So trying to limit how much extra recess time we have, because we don't have that much in-person time. I guess, I know there's social and those pieces, but also how are we tracking that if it's mixed grade levels at that point, what does that look like? Because I will say, I know the regular recess, it was set grade levels, but then the extra recess, it was mixed. I went out there and had like my own panic of contact tracing. So I wanted to bring that up about what our SOP is going forward through this. So I know there was conversation between Ben, Jamie, and Glenn. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So so that it wasn't just the crazy email chain.
So for me,
Glenn, oh, go ahead.
For me, it was about cleaning. It was about, having a reduced custodial staff and still allowing kids to be able to use the equipment. In the winter, it was when they're gloved, we weren't so concerned, but now it's warm enough to spray again. Then we were thinking if kids washed and sterilized their hands on the way out and washed or sterilized their hands on the way back in again, then, the need to sterilize between each and every recess was limited.
Glenn, we have the capacity to spray between recesses, don't we?
Well, we currently are. So
Right.
It's just the extra, because please keep in mind, the custodial staff is, when they're serving food, the custodial staff is in the building, covering lunch duties and doing that cleanup as well. So it's the number of people to be able to do the cleanup and then to make sure that you allow adequate time to spray the complete playground. You're not just talking playground, you're talking swings, you're talking everything that is associated with the playground, much like gym class, everything has to be sprayed. So I'm not saying it's huge time consuming, but when you've got other duties that need to happen as well, it's just making sure that you can get out there to do it. But we are spraying. We're just trying to figure out how to cover the extras. So, I mean, much like Ben, like the bus, if I can take that, we installed hand sanitizers on the bus. So when the students get on the bus, they hand sanitize, and in warmer weather, in the wintertime, they got gloves on. So we don't have necessarily the need there. But when they get off the bus, they hand sanitizers. So do we install outside hand sanitizers? So in between the times that we can't spray, that there's hand sanitizer out there for staff and student to use as well. So that's one of the ideas that I was kind of tossing around.
I think they hand sanitize on the way out and on the way back in.
Well,
So
I know,
that.
but what I'm saying is, what if you're out there and a student sneezes, or somebody else sneezes, or somebody coughs or something like that? So you want to be able to have it readily close instead of running back to the building to hand sanitizer. If you had it outside and something happened, you had some sort of disinfectant out on the playground for staff and students to use. I mean, let's face it, it's allergy season. I know my allergies are starting to kick in or what have you. So the likelihood of that happening is there. So just another way to be able to do that. It's just one way I was thinking. That's all. I mean, I'm assuming the students are going to be masked, but let's say, I've seen students when they get running around, they slide them down a little bit. So the likelihood of something happening there, is there. It's a reality. So I'm thinking if we install some outside hand sanitizers, it just gives us more option to everybody to protect themselves.
Has there been updated guidance from the state on hand sanitizing? Mask wearing is the number one thing, but is hand sanitizing still a primary concern?
Well,
Hand hygiene.
Yeah, hand hygiene. So hand sanitizing will be part of the hand hygiene.
Yeah.
So my thoughts is the biggest complaint we hear is that our students aren't getting enough instructional time. So I think Kathy brought up a point that by adding additional non-instructional time, that we're even shorting that amount that we're providing a little bit more. And I know it's nice weather and kids want to be out, and even, I want to be out, but we only have them 2 days a week. And are we doing the same thing on Tuesday and on Friday? So is everybody getting an extra recess time? And, that's just takes out another, whatever the recess period is, 20, 30 minutes, 15 minutes. Plus the time you lose in between transition time, getting kids ready to go out because they're looking to go out and then get back in and get settled down again. So it's probably twice as long as the actual period that's lost in instructional time. I'm not sure that we can afford to remove any more instructional time. I see, Jamie, people teach outside. Well, that's fine if we got space for them, as long as it's instruction.
And I agree. I think we got to be really careful with things like extra recess right now. And look, I love it. I think it's great for kids to get out and move, but how can we incorporate that with instructional time, right? Jamie says that, teaching outside. I think that's a very viable option. I think we can do that certainly, but I worry about, if just because it's Friday, it's funny, we're talking about this. My wife said to me this week, well, kids aren't going to miss much. Speaking of my stepson's not going to miss anything on Thursday because it's the week before vacation. And I said, yeah, but I guess in a year like this, that concerns me because we already have so few in-person days. This is not the year to have a movie day if we can possibly help it. And I know that's hard. I didn't teach, first grade, second grade. I was a middle school, high school guy, but at the same token, I think there's a lot of benefit to maximizing every single moment we've got them in front of us. So, yeah. But ultimately, so it's really key, and I don't want to speak for Glenn, but I think it's really key that if we're going to do things like outside instruction, and then after we do the outside instruction, we just need to communicate with our custodial staff about where kids are, where they've been, that kind of stuff, because Glenn says it right. If we've got custodians cleaning cafeterias and they don't know somebody's been outside and used the playground equipment, that breeds a problem. So just that communication loop is key for sure. Any more thoughts, ideas? No. All right. Does that end playground? Okay.
So just to wrap it up, what I'm hearing is no extra recesses. And what I'm hearing is make sure custodial staff cleans between usage.
I would say, like, if they're going to teach outside, just to ensure there's a list. Sorry, I gotta take this one.
Yeah, I just think we've got to make sure we do that. And again, I want kids to have every opportunity to move. We know that kids' movement is good, but how can we incorporate that with instruction? That's the big thing for me. So I know like at the high school, what's that?
No, I was just going to say, Ben, if you're going to teach outside, just let us know. So, we want to make sure that the exterior door, however they're going out, they're either going out the front door or the side door, whatever, that we just need to properly clean it. So just let us know what you're doing. And we can incorporate around that. We can move things around, but either at SBS or at the middle school, we just need to know.
That has been a problem at the middle school. I think LT is doing the teaching on side piece. We don't have the capacity at the primary school right now. At middle school, so.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Last but not least, preliminary conversation regarding fall. So yesterday, Western Maine superintendents met, and we had the deputy commissioner there. I got to be honest, like I'm Kathy and I both left that meeting really discouraged, really discouraged about what we heard. So certainly one of the things we've heard all along, first of all, the department has nowhere near ready to put out guidance for fall, which is really hard. And I get that. I get that it's a little early. At the same token, we heard yesterday that that is a 99% chance or more that we'll be wearing masks in the fall, which is fine. I mean, that is what it is. And I got to say, compared to what I've heard about other places, we haven't had the mask issues that other places have. I've been really impressed with staff and students about, the mask wearing and things like that. The other and hand hygiene will be a big thing again. However, the deputy commissioner did say that he is not thinking that the spacing requirements are going to go away, which was really discouraging to some degree. And so I think here's what I'm recommending. First of all, I think, and I want to hear from everybody, reorganization is going to help us to some degree, but I think we're going to have to get even more creative next year to figure out how we can get more in-person instruction. I just do. I'm worried about, we heard it last night at the board meeting, people want kids in school. The number one thing that's keeping us from in-person instruction, more in-person instruction is physical distancing. There's a big movement at the state level. Well, at the low, not the state level, there's a big movement statewide about back to 5. I don't know if anybody's seen what New Hampshire and Vermont have done recently, but governors issued executive orders to be back to 5 by the end of this month. I don't think that's going to happen in Maine, but I don't know that. But I guess I guess my question's going to be, we've got to start looking at how we can be more creative, and I'm all ears. Like I said, I think reorganization is going to help us, especially at the pre-K 2 level. But the middle school is really tight. Classrooms are small. The high school's got some small rooms. I don't know. I mean, thoughts about fall? Anyone? Jamie?
I worry about, like here at Carrie Ricker, we'll have a couple of extra classrooms, but I don't have extra teachers. Like I was just doing an observation the other day in Mr. Ireland's room, and he has 12 desks in there right now. And we could fit more student desks in, but even those 12 there's not like tons and tons of empty space around. So if we're talking about like 20 kids and he won't be here next year, but in that room, the part that gets really tricky is the 6 feet between the teacher and the kids. So you're talking 6 feet away from the teacher's desk, 6 feet away from their primary teaching location at the whiteboard or whatever. That really cuts the floor space down a lot. So technically we could fit 20 desks in there 3 feet apart, but then all of that other stuff just falls apart. It does, you can't do the 6 feet between the teacher. So we could find space. We could use the gym if need be. There's other spaces to use. It's not having people to put with kids in those spaces.
Well, that's been the big conversation too. People are talking about buying portables, and I keep telling my colleagues, that's great. First of all, portables are on back order for, I don't even know how long. But A, you got to have a place to put the portable. And B, you then have to have someone in the portable. I mean, we just can't go hire a bunch of staff. There aren't people to hire. And that was the conversation we've been having at Western Maine Superintendents. We're just going to end up pilfering from each other. And that doesn't create smaller class sizes. So,
but
Ben?
Jamie, you got to remember that you're going from 5 teachers to 6. So you will have smaller class sizes anyway.
Yes, which will help.
That'll help.
But if we're going to keep one of them essentials, that's not a big group. So it'll help a little bit, but it won't bring them down to 12.
What
No,
are
I'm not
the,
saying 12, but there's room in your classrooms for, 15, 18. They just might not get a teacher desk. Like that's the reality is, if we're talking, we might not have a teacher desk to I'm having 2 student desks. That might be what happens. You know what I mean? But in order to be 5 days in person.
Mm-hmm.
I walked out of the middle school and I measured with a meter stick, and we can probably get 22 desks in most of the rooms. We have 2 rooms that are smaller, but if we put the STEM teams in there with less kids, then that work out well for us. Lunches, I think we can work here. The primary school is a different story, though. Fitting 20 desks into those rooms at SPS is going to be awful hard to do. And I'm really worried about those kids, first and second grade. I'm going to walk around today and after school, and I'm going to move desks around to see if I can't squeeze in 22 desks or so with 3 feet between centers. Because that's what we're looking for. We're looking
But
for
look at
between
your
18.
numbers. Your numbers don't warrant 22 per classroom.
No, but if we have the essentials class of let's say 15, then the numbers go up, right? So I think we're going to be at 19 kids. I think right now, I think our worst
Yeah.
class will be 20, but that's if no one moves in, right? So I want to see if I can't do that today with the meter stick. But
Jeremy?
Well, I just heard Ben say 3 foot centers of desks. Is that the going practice? Because basically that's almost next to each other at this point, and there's no room to walk between.
Right.
So if you
That
put
is standard.
3 foot
Yep.
centers, then you're basically having kids touch each other as they walk into the room.
Jeremy, that's how the middle school has been going for years, though. I mean, we've had 24 kids in our classrooms. We don't have a lot of space here.
No, I understand that, but COVID situation is a little bit different for 3 feet on center.
3 feet from mouth to mouth. So center of the desk to center of the desk, 3 feet.
And they're not walking past for 15 minutes at a time. So, it's kind of, you look at the full picture, student walks by, it's a few seconds. So
I would just say, and maybe with that middle school, that's different, but with a high school with big bodies, you have kids at times and their clothing in each other's faces.
right, but if it's not those parts of the body that are expelling the virus or taking it in, that space isn't required.
Maybe not. I would just tell you with some of the smoke coming off their clothing, and that hits me in the face on occasion, I wouldn't want it near me either in this situation.
So I think, I don't know. I think what we've got to do, this is my thought, and tell me if I'm wrong. One of the things we've got to do, first of all, is we've got to figure out how we can maximize in-person instruction, specifically K4 and probably K5. That ultimately is where we've got to start, looking at that. But my thoughts are, if we take the month of May and start looking at each classroom, we will have started to place kids in classrooms. If we could work with leadership teams in our buildings to look at spacing, how can we look at it differently? How can we put desks in rooms differently? If we've got to rearrange rooms, how can we do that? Because ultimately, we're not going to get away. It's going to be really difficult to not maximize, especially pre-K5, maximize in-person days as much as possible.
So that's just classrooms. How about getting them to school?
Yeah, that's kind of where my question was. Right now,
That's where I was going to go next.
Yeah, our number is 46. So understanding we're taking 5th grade, which is 100 plus whatever, going on the high school, middle school run. But, you're still looking at for 600 kids on your elementary run. That's definitely going to put us over the 46. And you're not going to get, I don't know how you're going to get 3 feet, on the bus. And some of our bus runs are, honestly 50 minutes. So that's more than the 15. For me, everything starts with the bus. I mean, we can do whatever you want in the buildings and I get it. I just, until we get some clear guidance on how we can do the bus, I don't know how everything else can stem from that, because if we can't get them there, then how do we do that? I guess that's my question. I mean, the aisles are maybe 1.5 foot apart. So if you got one sitting on one end and one sitting on the other, you're 1.5 foot apart. And if those students having a bad day, I feel pretty confident that the mask is going to come down, and then it just creates some issues.
So I would just say there two things. One, there's no max or minimum on the bus. It's very generic. It just says don't make it full.
Fill it to capacity.
Right. So, I think that is one of the things that we're, it's like, be careful what you wish for. We're asking for a little bit more guidance from them about what that capacity is. But I think we've been stuck with that,
all year.
46, but I think we probably have some wiggle room. As Bob says, we've looked at our data. Let's look at what maybe our procedures need to look like for the fall. The
Yeah,
second thing
no.
is some of the districts that have had success on opening for 5 days did ask the parents, say, hey, we need your help, and survey and say, in order to do 5 days in person, if you can transport your kid, please do so. And then actually eliminates the need for that. And some of the districts had quite a bit of flip from bus to transport because that became a need. So I would suggest as a CPT team, it would be worth us thinking about surveying our parents to get their feedback like we did last year. And ask specific information about number of students needing transportation.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was leading it, Kathy, because I mean, I talked to my counterparts, and you're right. They surveyed their parents, and a lot of the parents that originally said, no, I want my student taking the bus, they changed their mind, much like it's happened to us. Both ways. We've had students that haven't been on the bus that now want to take the bus and vice versa. So the number's been kind of, right at that 46 or just a little bit below. So yeah, I think that as a group, if we can agree to survey the parents and find out who's willing to do that, that would be extremely helpful. Absolutely.
But I think we can work on that. Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I was going to mention and suggest the same thing is, parents want their students in class 5 days a week. And a lot of those parents can provide transportation. Some can't. Some parents may carpool. That's outside of our control. If they open up the door and kids from 3 families get out of the same van, that's not on us. If they volunteer to bring their own students in, then how they do that is on them. So I think that there would probably be a number of takers to provide transportation in order for their students to go to school 5 days a week instead of 2. I think that at the high school, that maybe we can control some of the class sizes through class offerings, or when we match people up and do the scheduling, just to throw in an extra variable in scheduling of students so that we can control and get the maximum out of each classroom that we can get for every period within the safe manner, so that we don't need extra classrooms that, unless, there are requirements for small class sizes for some things, but to try and maximize the space with the number of students that we have to serve. So while it's important for the younger students to be there 5 days a week, I'm not sure that, except for some students that can do really good online, and this hasn't bothered them all and their parents are happy, then I think it's important for us to try and get every student that we can back in 5 days a week.
I agree.
Can I just quickly, and I apologize, I had to step away there just for a second, but I had Jay go around at one point in time and measure out each of the classrooms, what we could fit as far as desks were concerned. And I think it was the difference of, I think it was 3 feet, like edge to edge as far as a desk is concerned, and then 3 feet between
Nose to nose.
Nose to nose or mouth to mouth, however we're putting it. And so I have those numbers here. It does, increase the class sizes pretty significantly. But I was thinking the same thing, Kathy, in regards to like extraneous furniture, filing cabinets, teacher desks, things like that. And I, obviously, like, I'm not trying to put people out by any means, but if it allows for additional space within, still fitting within the guidelines, I think we're going to have to look at, every option available to make that happen within good reason, and I'd be curious. I mean, I think that there have been people already who have swapped out their desks, their teacher desks or tables or even filing cabinets. Obviously we've got quite a bit of space now with sheds. So, I think that's something that we could definitely look into.
Our
And I
reason
think
for
too-
being is provide education to the students, and that's get them in class. So you're right. I mean, anything that's not necessary for the instruction on a day-to-day basis probably doesn't need to be in the classroom. If it allows us to put more students in, and we have the need to put more in. I mean, we don't need to make space if we don't need it.
And you know, we're at a point where we've got competing issues that are in direct competition with each other, but are both incredibly important. A, we got to be safe, but B, politically, we've got to figure out how we can maximize. And I hate to go that route, but it is a reality. I mean, we're putting out a budget right now. I mean, I'm going to be really candid. We're putting out a budget we need to pass. I mean, however, there's a political component to that, and part of that is making sure we're maximizing everything that we can do. And I don't want to jeopardize that. So, you know, I think we've got to get real creative real quick. And I think, you know, one of the things I've thought about with transportation is using COVID relief funds to bring in a few more drivers, because we have a few more buses now. The problem with that is, just like finding more staff, there aren't any. So I think we're gonna have to figure out, we're gonna have to ask parents. I mean, I don't want to do this. Please don't think I'm advocating for this, but we are not legally obligated to transport high school students. However, we have a lot of high school students who won't get to school if we don't transport. So I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying that we aren't legally obligated to do that. And if it comes down to, we can get more kids in because of, we're going to have to do things like that. Ben?
How long is a bus run? How long does it take us to get like the middle school, high school? How much time is consumed by that run?
So
About an hour, right, Glenn?
Well, the longest run on the high school is roughly around 45 minutes.
So not knowing the numbers, not knowing the arrangement, is there a possibility of having 2 starts? So we have 2 runs per group of kids?
No, so the problem is everything starts with your high school, middle school, but it's tied into the elementary. So that 15 minutes gets them to your SBS school and Cary, Recker, and Libby Tozier.
But what if SPS and you know, what if the pre-K 4 folk next year don't start until 9:30 in the morning?
What time are
You're
they getting
doing
out?
it the wrong way. Flip it. Start the pre-Ks at 8, the high school at 9.
Yeah, I would go
Either way.
early.
No,
Right.
but either way, so one starts at 7 because we'll start at 7 next year. One starts at 9. That's 2 hours in between. Why can't we do 2 runs?
Are you
We can take a look at that, Glenn.
Yeah, we'll take a look. Just clarifying though, I just want to make sure I understand. So are you talking 2 runs high school, middle school, 2 runs elementary?
Yeah, depending on the parent survey.
Or
I mean,
a
I
high school run, a middle school run, and then an elementary run.
Yeah, just
Right.
put each school an hour off from each other. I mean,
So
it's
it's a
more time.
staggered start, yeah.
I would rather have to pay the bus drivers more money to work longer hours than to get new staff involved and to have parents have to drive.
Well, okay, so, you know, in a perfect world, our buses were clearing anywhere between 4 and 4:15, and in the wintertime, it's dark at 3. So, you know, if you push everything back an hour, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, you know, even for, I'm just saying for, you know, even, you know, elementary, I mean, you want to home at 5 o'clock? I mean,
Well,
you know.
let's make the middle school kids walk. We'll give them little raccoon headlights they can wear on the way home. And,
I don't know. I just, you know, like Andy said, you got a political side to this. We can certainly take a look at it.
Yeah.
I'd be more apt to try to figure out, I mean, I'm just kind of pulling something out of my hat here, but, you know, if we looked at one run and if we're able to find more drivers, which I know they're not out there, but I would think politically that might be more acceptable versus trying to double up everything. Because then, you know, it infects the sports. What do you do for your high school sports? I mean, I've got one sub driver and, you know, he leaves at 2:15 for a sports trip. I don't know how you're figuring sports to come in there. And I'm not saying sports is a deciding factor, but for transportation, for us to be able to transport our students, that's
You're
something.
going to have winter sports that's going to be inside.
Right,
Yeah.
but you know, exactly. But you know, for again, speaking only of transportation, how do we get them there when our primary responsibility is getting the day-to-day kids home first before we would look at extracurricular activities? I mean, You know, like
yeah.
Bob said, Andy said, we're a teaching organization. So our first responsibility is get the kids to school so they can do their academics and then get them home. Everything else is secondary. So if you extend that, great. But what does that do for our secondary group?
I would just
I mean,
remind us that we don't need to have the solutions today, but we need to think about
just-
what is the homework that everyone has to do that. So it might be Andy and I need to kind of create a draft survey for the CPT team to look at. Each of you for building administrators need to think about your enrollments or for next year for the kids that are in your building and look at your capacity and figure out like what's your plan A, what's your plan B. Heather and Jeremy, think about like perspectives of a teacher. What do the teachers need in order to be prepared, like in terms of SOPs and procedures and all of those things. So I just think it's more about homework at this point. What is the things that we need to do in order to get to that next the level so we can continue these conversations, but we don't need to have solutions today.
Yep. Jamie was first, then Jeremy.
Sorry, Jeremy. I am wondering, I know we talked about this a while ago, cohort D, what is remote going to still be a thing, or is that definitely
I
not?
think we've got to, my thought process is we've got to hold off on that discussion for a little bit. Because depending on what happens within the region, there may be, that may be taken off our plates significantly. I mean, look, at middle school, high school, we can teach synchronously if we have to. I'm not worried about that. It's more about the elementary remote option. So, but Kathy and I are involved, well, Kathy more than I, involved in the with the W11 schools, Kathy?
A couple of bailed out. I have about 4 hours worth of meetings every week. I will have a plan by I would say mid-June of whether this will be a viable option for us. And we've put in that we would have like 2 seats per grade level. That does not equate to how many cohort D students. But it would be an application process of the right students who have done successfully cohort D or like homeschool students that would not join back with us in terms of they didn't want to wear masks, so they would not come in person or something. So we have some options, and we'll kind of I'll share what we have for a draft and see if it's viable. I have talked to Andy about options for us. If that doesn't become a viable, I am having like a plan B option for us for if the CPT team says to me, we need to have a remote option. I just feel like I need to prep for all options at this point. I don't want to get to the point where July and then have to build a whole academy. So.
So
Jeremy? Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think what I'm hearing is you want us to get, like, Kathy, you and I were having a private conversation about like lunches. You're asking for us to come up with a plan, or maybe 3 or 4 different ones of whatever creative ways we need to get all kids at my grade levels into the building if possible, full time. And I'm thinking that needs to be sooner than later, because there might be budget or ordering, or like if a teacher can't fit their desk in the room anymore, we need to get them a podium or some little something to put by the whiteboard to allow them to have
But
tools.
that's what the COVID relief funds are for.
Okay.
And so we're going to use those to get real creative.
So Michael and I could do that during vacation. I can't speak for Marco and Ben, but it's good timing that we're meeting today as far as that goes.
There was a method to the madness.
Yeah.
Jeremy.
I guess it goes along with the cohort D item. You know, if we're still being expected to do cohort D work, I can't see getting on my desk because right now I'm operating 2 computers at least. So just an issue there of thinking about what I need for services to do the job I'm doing currently. If I'm trying to use an Elmo and 2 laptops to run the class on, I certainly need services for those things.
So yeah, and I think that's a valid point. I think at this point, our first charge is, can we get 5 days in person? And let's go with that round, and then let's add that other layer after, because I really do think it would be a viable option to kind of do it on the side. I think our first big ask is, can we get everyone in 5 days? And if we can't, then we'll go to that next level and start thinking about that, Jeremy. But we need to know if this is even a viable option for us in our current structure.
So that sounds to me like the homework, right? So, you know, I think we come back here in 2 weeks and we meet again. Let's take a look at the building level. What is it going to take to get kids in 5 days a week? What is it going to take to get them? What are the barriers to that? And then from a teacher perspective, Jeremy, Heather, you know, what are those things as teachers you're going to need to do that in your classrooms? Need or not need? Does that make sense? Just thinking about that infrastructure piece, like you were just talking about, Jeremy, about, you know, what are we going to need to get you so that you can do that successfully at the same time while having 5 kids back in 5 days a week? Does that make sense? Okay. We've got to figure it out somehow. Politically, it's just not, it's going to be a non-starter for the fall. It just is. So, all right, that sounds like the homework. Anything else we need to talk about today?
Sorry,
Jeremy, did you have something?
So I quick question, and Jim's here, so I'll mention it partially because he's here. Do we know about summer sports at this point, and what those look like? I know we talked about fall, but do we know what the MPA guidance looks like? If there is any, are we back to normal that way?
There hasn't been any yet, I don't believe. We're waiting on hearing that. And I'm going to say this, I'll be quite candid. There's part of me that wants to, I love sports. You guys know that. I grew up playing sports, but I have a hard pill to swallow. We do them, but I have a hard pill to swallow when we can't have our kids in 5 days a week, but we can play basketball. It really bothers me. It is a contradiction in terms. And I will tell you, there are a group of superintendents who have started talking about putting their foot down and saying, we're not going to play sports until we're in 5 days a week. You know, that's a political nightmare too, to be quite honest. But I'll tell you, it's partly where I'm at. I watch kids run up and down the floor and rub all over each other playing basketball, for lack of a better term. I probably should have been a little more professional with that term, but playing basketball, or, you know how, Jeremy, you coach soccer, you know how physical soccer is. I argue that soccer is more physical than football a lot of times. And we didn't play football, you know, playing hockey. Hockey gear is the dirtiest stuff on the planet. It just doesn't, and I'm not there yet, but I'm really frustrated with that piece, and I love sports. So, you know, there is no guidance yet at this point for the summer. I'm assuming there will be at some point, but I just don't know what that's going to look like.
So with that in mind, so I have a schedule that's been put together by our local league that we usually do in the summertime. Should I be holding off on communicating that to our community?
I think Jim and I need to talk about that, because that's not something we've talked about yet, for sure. But it's a great question, and something, you know, honestly, Jeremy, I hadn't really thought about it. I'm glad you brought it up, because it really wasn't at the forefront of my brain, but it's something we do have to talk about. So, well,
and you bring up politics here. I mean, as we've been doing, you know, certainly without sports, I've heard from a number of parents, their kids wouldn't be even coming to school.
Oh, I know.
Yep. They'd be all cohort D almost, or just not invested at all. I don't know how that looks, other than terrible. So
it's terrible. Yeah, I know.
There is that
tough sell.
Sort of both arguments here, piece of it. And, you know, my feelings were the same way in the fall, in the summer as yours are now. But then seeing kids be able to, find some passion there and be invested in something was worthwhile for me. And I'm sure it was them.
And I don't disagree with you. It's that game on both sides. So,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Andy and Jeremy, that the MPA hasn't talked about summer yet. Their focus is on spring and trying to get some championships, but I think what's gonna have a lot to do with it is the sports medicine committee and what they're gonna allow. So I think that's kind of what they're waiting on. I know one of the things that they're trying to put a rush on is the Lobster Bowl for football, the Shrine Game, and already that's going to look a ton different. They're not going to do full teams. They're doing 7-on-7. So we should know more in the next couple of weeks about what summer guidelines might look like.
Okay. All right. So the homework, to summarize the homework, we need to go back next in 2 weeks. We'll reconvene. I'll send an invite out. We'll do a Thursday again. Looking at what our space is like, how can we maximize students' in-person instruction, come up with some plans. We'll bring them back here to talk about. Glenn and I will work on transportation, looking at what transportation looks like. I'll ask Heather and Jeremy to start thinking about, from a teacher perspective, what that looks like. And then we'll reconvene here in a couple of weeks. Anything I'm missing?
No, so
Okay.
next week's vacation, right? And I
Right.
imagine administrators are going to take a well-deserved break, as is the rest of our
Yep.
staff. So that doesn't give them much time to do that. But I was wondering if there is a software application out there, such as a CAD program, that's not too expensive, that could be used to map out the seating in each classroom, put in the criteria, the size of the desks, the space between them, et cetera, and push the button and see if it can allocate the maximum use of the space.
I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it.
And in that way,
AutoCAD, actually AutoCAD will do that. I just don't know how to do it. But
it might be something, because then when the time comes, you also have the floor plan, right? I mean, you just say, okay, here it is. Here's classroom number X. This is what the program says. This is where you go and put the seats. And you just go in there and that's where they go. And you can verify it. You can change it by the number of students so that you can then let the system automatically go and recompute to give the most space between each one. So if we don't need 22 and we only need 19, put it in and let it go and figure out where the 19 go to give them, So I don't know. It's just a thought. I mean, to use technology.
It's an interesting thought. Yeah.
To reduce the amount of tasking and work that would be done manually for an administrator or whoever to go to classroom by classroom, especially if they're the same size.
Yep. Yeah, we can look at that. Okay, question. Bob brings up a good point. It is vacation week next week. Do we want to meet in 3 weeks to have more time?
Yeah, May 6th, I think, is
I
when
do.
I have to meet the next
Yeah,
time.
let's go 3 weeks. I really want you guys to take some time off next week. It's important. So, all right, 3 weeks. I will send out an invite on that Thursday. So, all right.
Super.
Thank you all for your time this morning.
Thanks, everybody.
I appreciate it.
Birthday,
All right,
Marco.
enjoy your day.
Everybody stay safe.
Marco and Kathy, can you stay on? Oh, Marco's gone. Never mind.
I gotta head to the high school, so I'll come see you real quick.
I know.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.